Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Trade Block. I'm Ryan Wormeli, joined as I am every month by Pat Fitzmaurice. We are talking all things Dynasty here. As we usually do, Fitz, we're going to run through some of the recent updates to the Dynasty Trade Value chart that can be found at FantasyPros.com. We update that on the first of every single month all year long. So we'll go through some updates there for the first half of the show. And then in the second half of the show, we'll call some folks up onto the stages. They can be a part of the show, ask us some questions specific to their team, or big picture stuff, whatever they want to talk about. We'll also answer some questions in the chat as well. Again, that'll be the second half of the hour. Fitzy, how you doing here? December, like this is it. We are in the month to win some championships here.
Yeah, going into the final week of the regular season, so not much time left to jockey for position, get in the playoffs, get those buys if that's still possible, and then the 3-week sprint to the finish line.
How are your not all your teams across every league, but how are your dynasty teams looking this year? Did you end up being a contender or more of a rebuilder in most of your leagues?
It's a healthy mix. There are a couple where I might have a title shot. There are a couple where I'm rebuilding. There's one where I thought I was going to be. I actually in our Fantasy Pros league, I thought I might have a decent team this year, and it's just been kind of a disaster. So that's okay. I knew it wasn't a finished product, but I still like the roster. I think next year, hopefully, I'll be ready to contend. And then there was a league, the Kings Classic Dynasty League, with a bunch of fantasy people in the industry where I thought I would be just completely rebuilding, and somehow I just keep winning games and I'm going to be in the playoffs. I have no idea how, because that team is terrible, but here I am at like 5 or 7-6. And yeah, on the verge of getting into the playoffs. So it's really kind of a mixed bag for me.
I've got one league where I've got like the 3rd overall pick this year. Like, just I thought I was going to have a good team. I certainly do not. You know, sometimes that happens. That's the joy of Dynasty. At least you can turn around and say, well, I get a high pick for my troubles here, all these injuries and everything. And then the others, I'm either in the playoffs or fighting for a bye. So I'm in a good spot in a few of these Dynasty leagues. I took over a league for our sort of Tags Invitational League that a bunch of folks in the industry are in. That team's doing pretty well. That's in the playoffs. So that's kind of fun to just step into a roster and get handed a playoff spot right off the bat. Makes it easier on my part. You and I were both just eliminated. I think you were also from our Fantasy Pros Guillotine League, which was a bummer.
Yeah, we were the two victims.
My team was so loaded, and it just that's guillotine. You have one JSN. If JSN had even had half of his usual points, I would have advanced. But instead, he had 2 catches, and that was I only lost by about 5 points, and that was the difference.
I too was thwarted by the dead JSN game. If I got about an average game from JSN, I think I would have squeaked in too.
Yeah, so a bummer to go this whole year. It's a fun format, but let's jump into the Dynasty talk. That's what people are actually here for. Like I said, we're going to run through some updates from the Dynasty Trade Value chart. Again, updated the first of every month. We have, very interestingly, a new name atop the quarterback rankings, Fitz. This is a ranking that feels like vindication for you and I and a lot of the conversations we've had across the course of the last year. It's technically a tie atop the rankings, but tied at the top with Josh Allen is one Drake Maye.
Yeah, it's been a while in the making, I think. And I think there's a good case to be made for it just because of how well he's playing. And in the here and now, I don't think he's as valuable as Josh Allen, but Josh Allen is pushing 30 and Drake Maye is in his early 20s.
It's like you and I have been saying for a while that the upside here is like clearly like a tier 1 top 3 guy. And given the age, it's always been possible that was going to mean actually being number 1. You and I certainly didn't expect him to get there this year. We expected him to take a step forward and be great. We didn't expect him to usurp everybody at this point, but it's not, I mean, obviously Josh Allen, 3 weeks ago, he had 6 touchdowns in a game. Like, he's still amazing. But some of these other names that were ahead of Drake Maye that were kind of locked into tier 1, Jaden Daniels has not, obviously for a variety of reasons, had a very good sophomore season. Patrick Mahomes is still ranked, he's the fourth most valuable guy in this ranking, but not somebody who runs a ton, although he's run more this year. It's been an inconsistent offense. He's in his 30s. And Lamar Jackson, who is still like super elite, but has had a really bad month while dealing with these injuries. It's a poor offensive line, and he is nearing 30 as well. So you wonder how long the rushing is going to keep up. So you're looking at a lot of these names around Drake Maye, and like, who are you excited about? Some of these guys will probably still have better seasons than Maye next year. It's certainly on the table, in the next couple of years. But I don't think anybody, just given the age and what they're doing this, I mean, Drake Maye probably could win the MVP this season. It's either going to be him or Stafford. Just the enthusiasm, if you have Drake Maye on your roster, is probably untouched by any other quarterback.
Yeah, and it's funny. He might even be underachieving a little in terms of what I thought he might do as a runner this year. But the passing, oh my goodness, like I didn't see this coming. He is so advanced as a passer, and I would not be surprised if in a year or two we talked about him as the best pure passer in the league. And right now I think that goes to either probably Patrick Mahomes or Joe Burrow. I think Drake Maye is going to be knocking on that door very soon. I mean, just he can throw a dart when he needs to into a tight window. He can layer a ball between coverage when he needs to. He has every throw in the book, Worm.
It's just wildly impressive to watch him at his age, experience level, the talent around him not being amazing. I mean, it's improved over last year, but it's not like it's, some incredible setup that he's stepping into. We say this a lot, like, quarterbacks can make the situation look a lot better just on their own. Like Stroud did it his first year in Houston. That looked like a terrible situation. And then he was great. Drake Maye is doing it now. We see this, Jaden Daniels a year ago. I want to ask just about at the top of this position in general, the rankings wise, outside of Maye taking a step forward, haven't changed too drastically, but the values are largely down at the top. Like Josh Allen is still tied for the most valuable, but his sort of like numerical value that we assign here, it was 121 in Superflex before this update. It's now down at 103, and he's still tied for the top. Lamar Jackson's similar. He was up at I think it was 118 or something. He's now down at 91. So even though the rankings maybe aren't jumbling too drastically, the actual values are going down. Does that say anything to you about just the approach of quarterbacks relative to other positions, even in Superflex for you? Is this reflective of maybe it's just kind of a down year at the top overall? What do you make of that?
I think maybe there's a little more parity at the position than we thought going in. I think coming into 2025, we thought there was this huge separation between a lot of the guys at the top and then sort of the next tier or next two tiers. And maybe there's not quite as much separation as we thought, because we've seen Lamar Jackson now is on a really bad run. And not that we're going to say Lamar Jackson is trash or anything, but he's looked more mortal. And the fact that he and Josh Allen are starting to get into their late prime, maybe. Jaden Daniels being, and we were worried about Jaden Daniels with his body type and his style of play, that maybe he might be a little bit of an injury risk. And lo and behold, he's missed a lot of time with injury. And Patrick Mahomes has had, even with a lot of his shortcomings, I guess the last 2 years, I thought maybe it was a problem with his lack of pass catching weaponry. And now I don't think we can say that with Xavier Worthy and Hollywood Brown and Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce. So, and he's been good this year, but maybe not quite where he was at the beginning of his career. So Jalen Hurts has had his troubles. So yeah, I think there are warts for a lot of these guys at the top that maybe we didn't see at the beginning of the year.
Some other big moves around the quarterback position. You can take a look on FantasyPros.com if you want to kind of dive into those details. The one that I want to highlight with you before we move off quarterback, JJ McCarthy, what are we doing with him right now? You and I have had a lot of conversations off air about JJ McCarthy. We've had some conversations on air with our friend Debro about JJ McCarthy. From a redraft perspective, it's easy to kind of say this, it's not happening this year, obviously, and it's affecting the whole offense. But from a dynasty perspective, we still got him QB 22. He's in the same range as Michael Penix Jr., Kyler Murray. Those are the guys that he's kind of sandwiched between. The situation, obviously, we still think is very good with Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, Kevin O'Connell. You expect it to be a decent running game. But it's been just, I mean, like you can look up any stat you want, and JJ McCarthy has been among the worst at it. Advanced metrics, like more traditional stats, across the board, basically this century, he's been one of the worst quarterbacks like imaginable that we've seen. He's only had, 6 starts at this point. So, like, I don't want to go too far overboard on hating the guy who needs reps, clearly. But that's also what we said about Anthony Richardson. Like, oh, he needs reps and it'll start looking better. And then it just never happened. And now he is totally useless. Is McCarthy going down that same track, or do you still have hope for him, Fitz?
I'm glad you mentioned Anthony Richardson's name, because I think that's the comp that applies here. Because both guys are very toolsy quarterbacks with their running ability and live arms. But at this point, they have failed so badly as starters that for them to ascend to the point where they are starters again, they're going to have to win that job from a backup role. They are not going to be given a starting job to start the 2026 season. They're going to start as backups somewhere, Indianapolis for Richardson, Minneapolis for McCarthy, or maybe somewhere else for one or both of these guys. But they're going to start 2026 as backups behind someone else, and they're going to have to either, replace them due to an injury, replace the starter due to an injury, or somehow reclaim the starting job on the merits. Like either the guy in front of them bombs, or they're just so good in practice that the coaches decide like they might be an upgrade over what we've got. But right now, I mean, as a comparison, Worm, I'm looking at the wide receivers. JJ McCarthy is the same super flex value as Cortland Sutton and Jalen Noel. I think that's perfectly fair, given the premium on quarterback. And I love Jalen Noel. I think he's a terrific prospect. On one hand, I could see saying, oh man, I don't want to give up Jalen Noel for this bum at quarterback. And on the other hand, I could see saying, well, if the light comes on and JJ McCarthy figures it out, like this could be an absolute steal getting him for a guy who right now is kind of buried on his own team's depth chart at wide receiver. So I think the value is right for him, but what to do with him in Dynasty? Like if you have him, he's a sunk cost, and it's just a matter of if you want to take pennies on the dollar for him. And if you're looking at him as a reclamation project, yeah, there's a chance he could still pan out, but boy, what we've seen so far, not very encouraging.
Can we get a McCarthy for Richardson trade in real life and just give them kind of fresh starts on to other organizations? I mean, it is kind of funny to pit the two of them against each other just in this conversation, because it does feel like they both check a lot of similar boxes just from what we've seen in their careers so far. Before we get to the running back position, by now, most of you have probably heard of Reality Sports Online, the powerful fantasy sports platform where owners get to build and manage their fantasy team like an NFL general manager. But the question is, have you tried it? It's time to go see what all the buzz in the Dynasty community is about. Free agency, multi-year contracts, a rookie draft, multi-team trades, franchise tags, contract extensions, first-round rookie options, automated contract and salary cap functionality, and much, much more. Think it sounds complicated. It's not. The best thing about Reality Sports Online fantasy front office is that it doesn't take any more time than a standard league. It just requires more strategy. Think you're among the fantasy elite? Well, this is the platform to test your mettle. Still not sure? You can test out your general manager skills for free in a mock free agency auction. If you like what you see, use promo code FantasyPros to receive a 10% discount on your team or league today. That's promo code FantasyPros to receive a 10% discount on your team or league today. Fantasy just got real at realitysportsonline.com. All right, Fitz, going to the running backs here. New name at the top, Jahmyr Gibbs has usurped Bijan Robinson. It's not by much. They're still 1 and 2 by a wide margin. I kind of think they should just be tied, frankly. Like, obviously everybody's going to be super excited to have either. Gibbs does kind of edge him out just slightly here as of now. Some of the names behind him, Jonathan Taylor, obviously having an amazing season, slowed down a bit as of late relative to his insanely hot start. Ashton Genty, Devon Achane continues to be really explosive. Omarion Hampton, who we haven't seen for several weeks, I was actually a little surprised that maybe he didn't drop at all. Not that, we're out on him or anything moving forward. We obviously liked him a lot coming into the draft, but we've only gotten like 5 weeks out of him. And some of those were very good weeks, but still being ranked, inside the top 6 here at the position. James Cook, Bucky Irving, Travion Henderson takes a leap forward. Those are some of the names at the top. Does anybody jump out to you? It's kind of the guys you would expect. Would you quibble with the order here at all, or that's kind of about what you would have had if it was just your rankings?
Yeah, it is pretty close to my rankings. I think Hampton, we can justify it because he looked pretty good before that injury. And while his offensive line is kind of decimated right now, eventually, next year, Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt will be back, and that'll be a pretty good line again. And I would assume they'd fortify the interior a little bit. Breece Hall, he gained some value. Like, we were talking about this on one of the other shows this week about what a tidy operation the Jets have suddenly become for fantasy, where it's Breece Hall's backfield, and really they're only a couple of targets in the passing game now with like Adonai Mitchell and John Mechie. And now Breece Hall, I believe, is he going to be a free agent? I think he's going to be a free agent, and he's going to go probably to a better team than the Jets. So starting to come up, and our current value for him still might not be enough.
We mentioned Omarion Hampton, Travion Henderson, RJ Harvey. Is that the right order for those 3 rookies? They're very close in our rankings. Their trade value of 63, 62. RJ Harvey, or excuse me, Quinshon Judkins RJ Harvey is right near him, so I was reading the wrong name. I meant to say Judkins. Hampton, Henderson, Judkins. Is that the right order for those 3? And they're all kind of like within 1 of each other.
I think so. And the one issue, like Judkins, I don't know what he's going to be as a pass catcher. Like, hopefully he will be a better pass catcher than he has shown over the last, 6 weeks, when he's got like 8 receiving yards. I think he can catch passes. They're just not having him do it. Yeah.
If you were looking at kind of this range of some of these veterans, Javonte Williams, Chase Brown, Kyron Williams, Kenneth Walker, not the guys who are a lot older like Saquon and Henry, but kind of the names I just listed there who are like not old, but they're not young either. We kind of know what they are. Do you have a favorite of that group if you were targeting in a trade for maybe like you're trying to make a push here to get over the hump for this season, but you want a guy that will still give you some value next year? Do you have a favorite target of those types of names?
I like the talent to perceived value ratio of Kenneth Walker. I just think he's really talented. Not the most optimal situation right now with the Seahawks seemingly, they like to give Zach Charbonnet the ball near the goal line, and maybe they like to give Zach Charbonnet the ball a little too much. And the offensive line, I thought would be improved this year. Still hasn't been great. So there is still untapped production for Kenneth Walker. I feel like his best year is still ahead of him at some point.
I think he's probably the one I like best. I think you put it very smartly in saying that the kind of talent to perceived value ratio is the best for him compared to some of those others, because it does feel like there has been enough frustration for Kenneth Walker managers over the years that he is attainable. I think all the names I listed are attainable for the right price, but he feels like maybe the one. Somebody like Javonte, if I was certain that he was going to maintain the lead role in Dallas going forward without competition, I'm totally comfortable with his talent and coming back from the injury and consider him a smart target. You never know what's going to happen with that sort of setup when a guy was brought in on the cheap, and what that's going to look like in the coming years. They could easily draft somebody, find some other way to address the position. So those are the two that kind of would stand out for me. I think we move on to the receivers here. Jackson Smith-Njigba takes another leap forward. He is now number 2 in the rankings, and by like a pretty good margin. He's only one kind of trade value point behind Ja'Marr Chase, and he is 7 trade value numerical ranking ahead of third place. So he's a lot closer to first than he is to third. Feels totally fair. Obviously, prior to this last game where he burned both of us in guillotine, he's been on pace to maybe break the NFL receiving record, and doing it in like a situation where he's getting a lot of the percentage wise a lot of the targets, but it's not a very high volume passing offense. So his efficiency per target is just like a record-setting performance this year. So it feels totally fair that he is now in the conversation for number one here. Obviously, somebody like Justin Jefferson has dropped a lot. That's clearly quarterback driven. I continue to be a little nervous with somebody like Puka Nacua being as high as he is, just given some of the injury history and the fact that it seems like they don't really want to use him as a receiver when they get close to the goal line because they have the greatest goal line receiving weapon in NFL history in Devontae Adams right there. So that's kind of hurt some of Nakua's value this season, and then just you couple in some of the injury stuff. But there's not a guy in that range that I want to fight passionately for being ahead of him. CeeDee Lamb would probably be my choice, but I don't feel strongly about it. Amon-Ra is his usual high floor self coming off of a terrible game, obviously due to injury. Neighbors is going to be coming off injury for next season. Jefferson quarterback questions. Ibuka's trailed off a lot. Drake London has some quarterback questions. So, maybe even a guy like Rashee Rice, you could argue should be a lot higher since most dynasty leagues are PPR formats too. And, he just gets peppered with targets from Patrick Mahomes. But those are the names in the top 10. And it feels a little weaker than it has been recently. I feel like every name I just read, and then I'll toss to you, Fitz, because I know I've been kind of talking here for a while. It feels like every name that I just read to you is probably valued a little lower than they were the last time we talked, except JSN. He's taking a step forward. I feel like almost everybody else at least I'm like a little bit or a lot bit down on, depending on the situation.
I totally get it. It is frustrating that Puka doesn't get red zone targets, and he does have that worrisome injury history, but man, he's so talented. My wife happened to be in the living room when Puka made that insane catch on Sunday, and even she was pretty impressed by that, and she doesn't care too much about football. So I see a lot of the same things you do, Worm, where it's just none of these guys are totally without their fleas, and Justin Jefferson, I think, is maybe the saddest case here, just because now there is no solution in sight to the Minnesota quarterback problem, and at best they're probably going to have a bridge guy like a Jacoby Brissett type next year at best for the Vikings.
I'd love a Jacoby Brissett there.
that would be a best case scenario,
yeah,
oddly enough, but it could also be a Gardner Minshew type scenario. I don't know what they're going to do. They are in a spot.
Yeah. Outside the top 10, this is the order I'm reading these names is the order they are ranked in this chart. I'm curious if you would disagree on the rank. Tetairoa, McMillan, George Pickens, Nico Collins. I think that's a really interesting group of three. Would that be your order, or would you mix that up?
I think I would keep that order. I guess Tetairoa McMillan.
I think I'd rather. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
I was just gonna quickly. I think I'd rather have Nico than Pickens, but Tetairoa, McMillan, I think I agree is the number one of those three.
Yeah, Pickens has looked so good right now. He's having the kind of season that Nico had last year. And I think a lot is going to depend on where Pickens ends up in 2026.
I think that's why I'd rather have Nico, because I know he's going to be attached with CJ Stroud, who I still believe in, and I'm hopeful that they will address the offensive line this offseason and the play calling. But I know that the talent is great for both of them. I know the quarterback Nico is going to be with the next 3 years. I don't know the quarterback George Pickens is going to be with the next 3 years, which is why I kind of tend to lean Nico. And then Tet has his own quarterback question marks, although Bryce Young has looked good at times as of late. But he's just such a good player that I just want to have as much T-Mac as I can.
Yeah, that's a fair way of looking at it.
Yeah. Some of the other names here that have moved a bit. Jameson Williams goes up a little. Brian Thomas Jr. has moved down a little. Roma Dunze has moved down a little. Ricky Pearsall moved down a little. He's obviously missed a lot of time. Jordan Addison, similar issues to So Justin Jefferson, of course, Jaden Higgins taking a step forward, Christian Watson a step forward, Alec Pierce a step forward. I think Watson's the one I'd want to highlight with you before we move off the position. Just has stepped in and looked really good coming off of a gruesome injury less than 12 months ago. He's currently wide receiver 38 in these rankings. I think that's pretty justified, and I would be pretty. I don't know that I would want to like go out and aggressively say like go get Christian Watson no matter what, but I'd be pretty happy if I had him on my roster.
With good reason. Size, speed, ball skills, and he's attached to a good quarterback. So that's kind of everything we're looking for. And the only really blemish in his profile is the troublesome injury history. But we can't forget about that. He's already torn an ACL. And even before that, he had those chronic hamstring problems. Although apparently he found an issue or a solution to that problem, but then the ACL thing last year. So, he has had a remarkable recovery, returning so quickly from that torn ACL and returning and being impactful.
Would you rather have him or his teammate, Matthew Golden? Because they're tied in value in the chart.
You know how I feel about that, Worm. The reason they're tied is not because of my rankings, put it that way. Yeah,
I kind of assumed as much.
And we haven't seen like any bad stuff from Matthew Golden. Like he's mostly caught the balls thrown to him that were on target, but it's just, I don't know. I mean, he had kind of a sparse production profile coming into the league, and we've gotten sparse production.
I'm going to ask you two players versus Christian Watson. I think I know what direction you're going to go with both of them, but I still want to find out. Would you trade Quentin Johnston straight up for Christian Watson in Dynasty?
That's interesting. I think I would rather have Christian Watson.
I would agree with that. Though. Would you trade Xavier Worthy for Christian Watson?
That one, I don't think I would just yet. I know Worthy is not having the kind of season we hoped he would have, but man, he was pretty convincing last year when Rashee Rice was out of the picture. Like what he did over the second half of last season is production that we still have not seen Christian Watson reach. So, plus we don't really have the same sort of injury concerns with Worthy that we have with Watson. So I would say no on that one.
That's pretty much what I expected. They're within a few spots in the chart, so I wanted to throw them out there, but that's about what I thought it was going to be. Let's go to tight end here before we start getting to questions from folks who have their hands raised or have dropped their questions into the chat. Brock Bowers, remains perched atop the tight end rankings. Trey McBride's obviously looked really good with Jacoby Brissett. He moves up a little. I'd be inclined to move him even more if I was certain what the quarterback position was going to look like in Arizona going forward. There's obviously a bit of a question mark there. Tyler Warren stays in his spot at third, dropping just a hair in value, but still obviously thought of very highly. Tucker Kraft right behind him, obviously, not getting anything from him the rest of the year. Ronnie Gadsden, who has fallen off a bit in the last month. He really only has two. I think it's two double-digit scoring games and half PPR scoring this season. It was the back-to-back earlier this year. Hasn't really happened since, but he's still inside the top five. Sam Laporta, Colston Loveland takes a step forward. He's had a bit of a mini breakout here in the last month. Jake Ferguson, George Kittle, Harold Fannin, that rounds out the top 10. Is there anybody inside the top 10 that you would say you strongly disagree with?
Disagree with? No. I'm pretty much on board with all these rankings, and I'd maybe have Loveland ahead of. I'd rather have Loveland than Laporta, and I think I might rather have Loveland than Gadsden. They all have the same ranking.
That's what I was going to
For me
up,
personally, yeah. I think Loveland is a cut above Gadsden and Laporta. I mean, better pedigree than Gadsden as far as where they were drafted. And I think I'm a little more convinced with what we've seen from Loveland than I am with Gadsden. That Loveland is going to be long-term a high-level fantasy tight end. I think Gadsden will be, but I'm more certain of it with Loveland.
If you were taking a swing on one of the tight ends that are closer to the late teens, early 20s, who haven't totally broken out yet, but you're saying like, hey, I want to maybe get them included in a deal or just go trade for them straight up because I want to address the position for the future. Would you rather Isaiah Likely, who's 17th in these rankings, Terrence Ferguson, who's 20th, or Elijah Arroyo, who's 21st?
I would rate it Likely, Ferguson, Arroyo. Really intrigued by Ferguson because he is an athletic freak. I just hate that he's being used in a 3 or 4 tight end mix with the Rams on a team with 2 excellent wide receivers. So it's not a great situation for him right now, but the talent is very intriguing. We've talked about this before, Worm. Isaiah Likely is going to be a free agent this year, and so is Mark Andrews. Either Likely stays and Andrew goes, in which case Likely is the number 1 tight end on a team that uses its tight ends a lot, or Likely goes somewhere else and gets his chance to shine without having to share snaps and targets with Mark Andrews. So I think Likely is not a bad target at all to go for if you're looking to make moves here in the waning weeks of 2025.
You already know how I feel about Likely, so I'll spare everybody listening a repeat of something I pretty much say every time we talk about him. I really like Terrence Ferguson a lot, and I think there's a world. I don't think this is a guarantee, but I think it's enough of a non-zero chance that what I'm about to say will happen that I would be really interested in adding him. There is a world where a year from now, Davante Adams has, father time is hit and he takes a step. We know when it happens fast. I know he's been really good this year, especially in the red zone, but when it happens fast. And if in year 2, Sean McVay says, hey, I have this athletic freak who is flash at tight end. Tight end is a position that takes a while in the NFL, but he takes a step forward. He's better than these kind of veterans that we've had him splitting time with. I think there's a world where he's the number 2 target for the Rams next season. I'm not saying that is definitely going to happen, but I think for a guy who's currently being valued as tight end 20 in these rankings, I think the potential of that scenario happening, because if that happens, he's all of a sudden a top 8 tight end. And the potential of that happening, I think is enough to be worth going after.
Yeah. And even if Puka and Davante were both there, I would just like to see him in the sort of role that Tyler Higbee had for the Rams a couple of years ago, where he was just the tight end instead of, chopping it up 4 ways with Higbee, Colby Parkinson, Davis Allen. It's just frustrating right now.
You can evaluate trades with confidence using FantasyPros Trade Analyzer. Instantly see the impact of trades on your team and get expert recommendations, whether you're making a 2-for-1 deal or swapping a couple draft picks for that stud who will help you win now. The Trade Analyzer will help you optimize your roster and make smarter decisions. Try the Trade Analyzer today at fantasypros.com/myplaybook and dominate your league. Thanks everybody for tuning in. For Fitz, I'm Ryan Wormeli. Best of luck here, locking up those playoff spots if you are a contender. We'll see you next time.